Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit and reintroduce the project. Augusta Reed Thomas, we all know, she's been a real pal to the School of Music here for decades. Thanks to Chris Gross, a cellist in the New York area and who heads up the Talia Ensemble, he commissioned her to write a piece that a cellist of lesser experience could take on. And so what we have here in Rainbow Bridge to Paradise is a piece maybe more for an intermediate cellist. It has some tricks. But, and the idea was that this would receive its premiere in New York, which it did. And they have been kind enough to welcome us to play this and for everybody to get their hands on it. And so this is all about the birth of a new piece of music and how we encounter a new piece, dissect it, come to own it and perform it. And it's also how we promulgate new music in the larger musical community of cellists. Or Gusty Thomas is going to have a Skype session with us. She really wants to talk with you and hear you. So we'll do that right in here, and Chris Gross will as well. And you've all had a chance to look at this and talk about it together. And maybe the thing to do would be to listen to it. Do you want to play it?
Sure.
piece?
I think it's so great that you did it. I just played a coffee concert with the Florida Orchestra, and Stuart Molina I'm sure he inspired the program, and he conducted, and it was all pieces that had to do with childhood or remembrances of childhood, and he was saying that pianists are so lucky because they have wonderful pieces from Anna Magdalena, from Bach to Mozart to Bartok to you name it, Prokofiev. They all wrote pieces for church or for people who could not do anything, but still were good. And how lucky the pianists are, and we are. There are so few pieces, good pieces, especially of contemporary music.
Yes.
There are some, but you have to look hard.
Well, I think they've done a very special thing. If it's absolutely up to us to create the ongoing history and pedagogy of our instrument, and this is where I think Chris Gross is just absolutely right on, because there's a whole bunch of young little cellists in New York City playing this.
And it's so nice to get
and
out
it's beautiful, and you can use this on, this is, start playing this, use it on your auditions, use it, put it on your programs. What were your discussions with each other about the piece? Like, what did you have questions? Do you have observations about what's here? Do you find it remarkable? Do you find, in any way, do you notice certain things?
I think it's very interesting how in the beginning, almost every two measures has a different feeling. Description, like an exhale, like a question.
I think she's being really courageous to put things like this and invite her performers to do this. And she's not writing for little kids here. This is what she does in her music, and she's, other composers, Messiaen does this. Sometimes practically impossible descriptors, and so the performer has to really kind of think, well, what's behind this?
Does she play cello?
Cello is her favorite instrument.
Is she familiar?
She's a trumpeter, and she understands how to write for the cello.
I think it's very well written.
It's very idiomatic.
Yeah.
I love the way how she writes at the top to use open strings as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives us such a, you don't see that a lot when we play some of these chords. We always think that we should cover the D or the A and play it with standard stuff, but it's really cool that it's open string. It gives it a totally different sound.
And it really fits here.
Yeah.
It informs the rest of the piece using all of the strings, or mostly.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting the silences, all the silences that she had, the dynamics right on the silences, so that the music is continuing into the silence.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of active silence in her music. Did anybody? I can tell you this. There is no atonal music in her world. She doesn't. Nothing is atonal. Everything is. She will tell you everything is tonal.
So my name's Josh. I'm a fourth-year undergrad here at USF. I'm a music studies major. And I found it really interesting to get to talk to Augusta Reed-Thomas and to Chris Gross about the process that they went through in getting this piece started and the completion of it, which is something that happens all the time in the musical world. People get commissioned, they write pieces, and they get performed. But I've got a particular interest in the business side of music. It's my minor, actually, is business management. And it really fascinates me how we go about paying for these things and getting these things started and how all that works in the musical world with, I don't know, I found all of that very interesting, and it was a good opportunity to get to talk to the composer and the commissioner about that process.
So everybody, this is Mr. Chris Gross. And he is the gentleman who is responsible for this whole wonderful project. And we're so grateful to you for doing this commission with Augusta Reed-Thomas. Thank you.
No, thank you guys for doing this project. And, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. And, this is exciting for me. So thank you so much.
Yeah. It's really very generous of you to share this with so many people.
Oh no, it's literally, it's really my pleasure. It's been very exciting right now because, you know, the commissioning process, as you guys probably know, takes a little while. And now that the pieces are finished, to hear them being played by people and, you know, played all over the place, it's really gratifying. So I really humbly, you know, thank you for doing this and taking this on. So.
Well, it's meant a great deal to us, and we're in process. So
Cool.
we're looking forward to learning from you right now, Chris. Can you tell us how did you conceive the idea? How did this happen? How did it start?
You know, I live here in New York. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I live in New York, and I teach. I do a lot of different kinds of teaching. One of my roles is a teacher at Lehigh University, which is for it's a school that is not necessarily primarily for music majors. But there are a lot of musicians there and cellists, and I have a pretty full studio there. I have anywhere between 8 and 9 students. Most of them will not be professional musicians like you guys. And I've been teaching there for several years. At the same time, of course, performing a lot of concerts and with a focus in contemporary music, new music. And so really it was very practical and pragmatic from my end. I wanted to have repertoire that I could share with my students at Lehigh that was from this time, from now. And the challenge, of course, as you probably know, is that so much contemporary music it's really written for professionals and people who are on a professional path. So I had been hunting around for different pieces that were both challenging in a musical and a stylistic way, and engaging music that was not from the you know, from the more traditional realm, but at the same time would be more accessible from a technical standpoint. So that's really what it was born out of. It was very pragmatic in a way. I wanted to use this music in my own teaching, but you know, to answer your question, in a way, it was very selfish, and so I was like, I really wanted to use this stuff in my own teaching, and I felt like there was a missing repertoire link, and that's kind of where it came from.
I have a question. So I'm John Chatterton. I'm sorry. Yeah, you can see me. So the amount of composers living in New York, and I'm sure being a contemporary cellist yourself, all of the composers you must know. How did you come to Augusta Reed-Thomas?
Well, I've worked with her in some different settings before, and around the time when I was sort of thinking of which composers I would ask for this project, around that same time, I happened to work with her on a project. It was a summer festival in Boston called the Wellesley Composers Conference.
Sure.
And, you know, the nice thing about Wellesley is that you're all living there at the same time, and so you spend a lot of time together. We kind of hung out, and I just, you know, asked her. I just thought, you know, first of all, I think she is an incredible craftsman. She pays such great attention to the details. Her music is always beautifully rendered, and I thought that she was also very receptive to the idea of writing music for you know, people who are not necessarily like you know, the kind of cellist that she probably normally works with, like Lynn Harrell or Yo-Yo Ma, those kind of people. She was incredibly gracious throughout this process. We worked on the piece quite a bit in terms of what technical things would work well, musical things, bowings, fingerings, that kind of thing. So at the end of it, I feel like this piece is like, in my estimation, it's really user friendly. It's ready to go. You know, I think she answers a lot of the questions, any possible questions on the page, and you know, I thought she created a really beautiful piece that fit the project very well. But of course, with Gusty, she's a fantastic composer, so it was sort of a no-brainer really to ask her.
Yeah, but it's all thanks to you.
No, I mean,
really,
this is my pleasure. It's just kind of like, this is all, it's exciting, and I hope that you guys, as cellists and musicians, you're going into your careers, like, I hope that one thing that you take away from this project is that if you have an idea, you can do it. I mean, you can execute it. You can if you have an idea for a unique project or commission or something working with a community or students, like, it's really it will really add to your career in terms of like having a sense of purpose and a sense of motivation, all of those things, which maybe right now when you're in school, that's maybe not what you're thinking yet, but I think in time you'll probably see that these kind of projects can be really gratifying and worthy of your time. So.
Well, Joel Krosnick once put it as with the commissioning processes, creating the ongoing history of our instrument.
Absolutely.
Which I thought was a very beautiful way of putting it, which is exactly what you're doing.
Yes, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think one of the great things about being a musician, playing composers, commissioning new works, just like you said, we are creating the tradition. We are keeping that tradition alive in a very active way. I mean, the choice to commission a piece that literally changes the thread of musical history. And that is a very cool and inspiring thought. Who knows? In 100 years, people could be still playing this piece, which is, I mean, that's one of the really inspiring things about commissioning composers. And I hope that you all are doing that in Florida, and people people you look up to, all of those people. So.
Well, any number of us are already doing that, but we're also, every one of us, there are a dozen cellists here, 12 in all, each of whom are going to be playing this on their recitals this spring. So, next month. And starting as soon as...
I'm curious, I'll ask you guys, what is that like to all be working on the same piece and a new piece, which...
Lena and everybody.
Deep breaths. I'm playing this Friday. I put together a program of all living composers. And in a way, it's both terrifying and extremely enlightening, because every single one of us has something that I think really separates our own performance of the composition. And so getting input from every single one of the cellists here, like anytime that you get a chance to discuss its challenges, or even just sitting in a lesson, you get kind of a different insight and a different approach to looking at the piece that, not only may sway your own interpretation of it, but just gives you an opportunity to consider your own choices again. So I think that in itself is kind of cool, because it gives you a sense of creativity that maybe ordinarily you wouldn't necessarily have access to. But on top of that, it's terrifying, because, I mean, you're around like these monster cellists, and then you go to play the same piece, which all of them know intimately, and like one little like right hand vibrato, and you're done for, and everybody in the room knows.
Well, I would just, I mean, I think that's that's a common experience for a lot of for being in school and when people are all playing similar music. But I think what is so inspiring about when you are learning new repertoire, and it sounds like you're already thinking along these lines, is just that you guys are creating the tradition. I've been teaching a student right now Elgar Concerto, right? And one of the things that involves is actually asking him to forget the recording that he heard, the recording, the Dupre recording, which everybody of course knows and loves, but that's that's a different experience than learning a new piece where there really is no tradition. I mean, you guys are making the tradition, and yes, that can be fraught in a way, but it's also very cool. I mean, by wiggling your finger in a particular way, you are changing the tradition of this piece and changing the way that each other hears the piece and creates the piece for yourself. What's so cool about music and classical music is that each of us does it our own way, and we can do it our own way. And I think that doing this project the way that Scott has organized it is, highlighting that in a pretty radical way, how each of us brings something unique and special to a performance.
I'm jumping back in. What's really interesting is we have a studio of a dozen or so, and we all have we come with various levels of experience. And my observation is that every last cellist, everybody has performed this now in cello class, has something unique to bring to it at every level.
Hi, my name is Alec Pearl. I'm a first-year music education student here at USF in the cello studio. I see this piece as a journey through someone's life. And you start, and then you have all these trials and trepidations and all these tensions and releases that happen throughout your life, and then you finally have this release as you ascend into heaven, or however you want to interpret the ending.
Well, Austin had an interesting thought that, why don't you lead off with what you were just saying?
Well, I was just going to say that whenever I first got the song, that I really didn't like it, but it's starting to grow on me because it was like the first song that actually forced me to be super expressive, and I've never really been much of a mover when I play, but this is kind of like bringing that side out of me, and I guess I needed that. So
yeah, it has some demands in it that you can't achieve only by playing.
Yeah,
just by playing notes.
Yeah.
You can't.
I found that having a newish or brand new score gives me a sense of ownership that sometimes I don't feel I deserve with Bach or Beethoven. That's just my neuroticism maybe, but there's something about that. But if you can take that back, this feeling of looking at the syntax of a score and making it fully mine, and that I can own a Brahms score if I approach it as a piece of new music in the same way that I could own a brand new score of something that's maybe never been played.
Hey, I'm George Alexander. I'm a first-year grad student. One of the big things for me that I notice in the music is that the directions that it gives you are like an exhale, or sort of ascending, or as if it's the final note of the piece. And it's made me think about sort of what would older composers have written if they used more freer language, if they used those sort of words, those sort of descriptions in their pieces. So I like to try and take those ideas and put them into other works that I was studying at the time.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Hello, Gusty.
Oh, this is great. Thank you so much for meeting.
Thank you,
Thank
Gusty.
you. Yeah, thank you.
We know you're very busy today. So, Gusty, as you know, there are 12 cellists, and all 12 of us are learning and performing Rainbow Bridge to Paradise.
Thank you.
And we thought it would be fun if two of us played for you today, and then we just had, we've got all sorts of questions and want to ask you about the piece and the project and all that, and maybe take no longer than an hour to meet with you, okay?
Yeah, thank you all so much for learning this piece and for making it your group project. It means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to the gentleman who commissioned it, Chris, and I know you met with him. So thank you for that. It's wonderful of you.
So, Nick, maybe you can get your cello out. Gusty?
Yeah.
We have a lovely composer cellist here, and this is, sorry, Nick. This is John Chatterton.
Hello.
And I wanted to introduce you two, and maybe you have something?
I do. So it's my question for you is rather along the lines of what Nick had to say. So in regards to the molto rubato sempre and the exact rhythms that you're putting in the music, I'm curious. It's to me. Everything is so exact. Everything you want is here on the page, and then on top of it, we have all this written expression. I've gone through and I've tried my best to interpret a lot of these written things in the best way that I possibly can. But I'm just curious how you come up with all of your written expressions in the music on top of everything that you're already doing.
Basically, I sing the music in my head, and I think, oh, well, if I was in a rehearsal, I would say, oh, that should be elegant. And then I would say to you, oh, that should be like an exhale, like just let it exhale. And then I would say, this is really heartfelt, but it's going to turn into an optimistic heartfeltness. It's not heartfelt like stab yourself in the chest with a knife heartfelt. It's an optimistic one, or something like that. So I'm just trying to give you a sense of, like majestic and lyrical. Ta-ta-ta. It's not, it has a lyricism through it, but there's a sense of majesty to that little tiny event. So basically all the words I write is exactly what I would tell you if I was in a rehearsal with you. And I can't be in a lot of rehearsals, obviously. No composer can. So I just, like 25 years ago, I would say to somebody, like, oh, that should be playful. And then they would pick up the pencil and they would write playful. And then 10 minutes later, I would say, oh, but this should be very sotto voce. And then they would write sotto voce. And then I watched this happen. So about 20 years ago, I just started writing down what it is I would tell them anyway.
Real quick, a lot of your solo pieces, are that you've written, like for solo violin, for example, incantations. I'm curious, were you always open to doing the transcription, like for viola, or writing out these transcriptions?
That's a good question. I wrote the violin pieces for violin, and I wrote the cello pieces for cello. And then I fell in love with the viola because it's so beautiful. I've never been commissioned to write a viola piece, so I never have been asked to just write a straight-out viola piece per se. So I have made these transcriptions, and I've learned a lot from it. The only time that I've transcribed for all three instruments is Rainbow Bridge to Paradise, this piece, and then recently I made a transcription for cello of Incantation.
Hello, my name is John Chatterton. I'm a second-year graduate student at the University of South Florida. Learning this piece requires a different mindset than when learning standard repertoire. A lot of standard rep from the past couple hundred years, there's a lot of technical demands and a lot of things that are theoretical based. But this one, when it comes to learning a piece by a living composer, there's many more things that come into play. You're working with their sound world rather than what they're doing based on theory and what has already been learned. And this piece in particular required me to really understand what Augusta Reed Thomas was looking for and asking for. Her directions are very finite, and it required me to really focus on all of her directions in the work to help me adhere to what it is she was looking for in the piece.
This is Josh Thornton and Gusty, and he has a question.
I do. So this is kind of along the same vein of what John was asking, but maybe a little bit more abstract. I've never had the opportunity to, apart from John, to speak to a composer who's written music that I've played or experienced. And I guess I never realized the kind of connection that has to be made through the music between the composer and the musician. That there has to be a lot of information related about the spirit of the piece, about what is essential to the performer. It's obvious if I thought about it, but I'd never had the opportunity to think about that relationship between the composer and the musician. And I don't know if you have any ideas about that or a philosophy or something about that, what you want to communicate to the musician that's essential. And here you have these descriptive words and these metaphors and very precise rhythms and such written down. But I don't know if there's something more to that. It's just something that caught my attention when you were talking to John earlier.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say, Josh, I mean, this is maybe I'm biased, but I think it would be such a shame for all of you cellists to not work with living composers. Because I think some people really do spend their life just playing standard repertoire, and they don't really roll up their sleeves and get in there. And, you know, not every new piece is good. A lot of them are bad, actually. And then some have good moments, and then some are really good. You know, so I think you have to get in there and just be willing to go on the adventure with the composer, even if it takes, you know, 3 or 4 days out of your life, but it wasn't a great piece. You're still going to learn a lot. And it's going to bring your technique into some new place for some tricky passage or something that you had to work out. So it's all good in that way. And I think also learning like how to just talk with each other, like talk about the aesthetics of the piece or what is the intention of the piece. Sometimes young composers don't know what their intention is. They're really just working it out. And so that's okay if they tell you, I don't really know, but let's just see what we've got here. But I think it's really fun to work with live musicians and with composers, especially, you know, it would be such a shame to you have all these great composers there to not engage with them a lot. Like commissioning a piece, a 4-minute piece for your recital or something like that. It makes such a difference for the life of the composer, and it can be really enriching for you. And I think one of the things Rostropovich said at this, he commissioned many pieces for me, and there was this cocktail party thing with all these donors, and then they were saying to him, well, you commission all this music, and, you know, some of it's not very good. Like, I think they didn't like my piece, frankly. But anyway, so Slava said, well, if you have an average track record and you know what you're doing, you're a musician and you work with artists, only 1 in 7 pieces you commission will be good. That was his take on it. And then he says, if you're me, meaning Slava, if you're Slava, I have better odds, he said, you know, because he knows who the world's composers are or something like that. So then he was saying, you know, maybe you get 1 in 3 pieces that are good. But they're not all good. You know, it's hard to write a good piece, trust me. And so you have to be willing to do all 7 to get your 1. And Slava was willing to do that, literally. He went out there and did that, and then now he built this repertoire. So, I mean, it takes a long time, but if over the course of the next 10 years you commission 7 works, you get 1 good one, it's crackerjack, it's great. I mean, you can play that the rest of your life, and you can record it. It's a unique piece for you, that kind of thing. But you have to be willing to go with the others.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I was just going to ask a question sort of about the dynamics, because there's a note written in the piece about how they're sort of exact levels. So that's one thing I've been kind of looking at, and in particular the crescendos and diminuendos. Are they sort of are they very exact? Is it supposed to be spread out equally over each beat? Because there's, for example, bar 29 goes from pianissimo to forte by the end of it. Is it very kind of, is it spread out exactly over the whole measure, or is it kind of an exponential crescendo towards the end? Or is it sort of up to us?
That's a great question. when I write them like that, I mean them to be spread out and starting when printed. I mean, not that someone has to follow it exactly, but if I want something exponential, I will write it. I'll put like double piano, crescendo, double forte, all on a quarter note.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. As a student, I feel very appreciative. In our standard repertoire in the intermediate range, we don't really have much exposure to intervals like seconds and sevenths being used in the context of, poetic or cantabile. And it's really liberating to be able to use that musical sense in an approachable way as a student, so thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, it's really Chris Gross's idea to commission these pieces. I mean, he's a superstar. And I think one of the things is I like pitch a lot. And so, I love major sevenths. I mean, how good does it feel to, play this open C string with a B natural? I mean, it's just what could be better? And I just love that interval. And then, the meaning of the perfect fifth. And what does the half step feel like? And when you finally go to the minor third, it feels like you jumped a mile.
I have another one. Do you plan on writing any more pieces for the intermediate cellist, or is this going to be like a series thing, or?
I don't know. I think Chris is going to try to put these all out as a set, maybe. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think I'm writing for people of all ages. For instance, I've done pieces for girls' chorus. 12-year-old girls at high school band, and youth choruses and things. But then I've also done pieces for the Cleveland Orchestra and the Berlin Philharmonic and all those other things. I like to mix it up. It keeps me on my toes, to tailor make a piece that can actually work for what it is. I try to tailor make the pieces.
Okay.
So I think if I were given another opportunity to, I would.
Thank you, Gusty, for your time and being so generous with us and talking about this and hearing us, and for all the music you've given cellists.
I'm Helga Winold, and I play and teach cello. And I have been really fascinated with this project that we have been doing here. I have learned from every single student on every single step as they approached the piece, as they got more and more into it, and I learned something from every one of them. The approaches were so different as you only can find in a class where everybody has great freedom to express themselves. And with this piece, for many people, it was their first attempt at something not outrageously contemporary, but at least not something where they knew the language. And it became more and more the language, and it was wonderful to watch. And I'm very lucky to have been seeing this grow and get to this wonderful level.
So I've been thinking about the first time I met Augusta Reed Thomas, and this goes back to the mid-90s, and I contacted her out of the blue because I'd heard of a cello concerto, Vigil for cello and orchestra, that she composed. And that sort of cemented a decades-long relationship with this most wonderful composer. So you can imagine how delighted I was when Rainbow Bridge from Paradise appeared for intermediate cellists. And it was such a wonderful idea, and with the assistance of Chris Gross, who commissioned it, the cello class at USF took it on. We were allowed to take it on to learn this piece and perform it. And I'm just so delighted that that this composer who has taught me so much over the decades, I've learned so much from Augusta Reed Thomas, and that my students also got to meet her and work with her, and a whole new generation of people watching them process this through their eyes and through their fingers
has been incredibly satisfying. And I'm just so grateful. And we've had a ball. I think everybody has found that with a score that you can have a dozen different performers take the same blueprint and deal with the musical syntax, the language, and come up with 12 entirely different and valid interpretations. And the lesson that we take from this is that all music is new music. And whether it's a score of Brahms or a facsimile of the Bach suites for solo cello, or a brand new off-the-press work from Augusta Reed Thomas, that the process is precisely the same.